Hello everyone! In today's video, I'm going to be continuing with the budget RC drift build by adding some scale details to the body, including window tint, body lines, spoiler, and decals. For those of you who haven't been following along with this project, I started this build a few months ago, the idea being to build a rear-wheel drive drift car for under $300 with minimal compromise to quality and performance. I started with a 3-racing Sakura D4 chassis and added some mid-range electronics, including a censored brushless motor, high-speed servo, and Gen's Ace battery. I then painted and mounted this ABC Hobby Nissan 180SX body and took it for a test drive. With my only previous drifting experience being with all-wheel drive vehicles, rear-wheel drive drifting provided a whole new set of challenges, but also a more realistic and engaging driving experience. One of the challenges with my vehicle was having tons of weight in the rear. I did this because I wanted plenty of room for a full interior in the center of the car. After some suspension tuning, a change of tire compound, and balancing out the weight as much as I could, I was able to get the car to drift much better. This is by no means intended to be a competition-level drift car, just a fun build with a nice balance of scale detail and performance. Something that I can drift around for fun on my own or casually around the track with some friends. So with that said, let's continue with this build. The first thing I wanted to do was cut out the headlight and spoiler pieces by scoring with an X-Acto knife and removing the excess plastic just like when cutting out the body. After cutting them out, I like to sand along the edge to make sure it's smooth. Before installing those pieces, I wanted to do a few things to the body first. Starting with tinting the windows, I traced around the rear quarter windows so I know what size and shape I needed to cut the window tint film. I'm using the same process I used on the Subaru Impreza body, which is using small pieces of automotive window tint film to tint the windows. I apply it basically the same way you would on a full-scale vehicle. I also made myself a couple of squeegee type things to help with applying the tint. These definitely helped, but like with the Subaru, I found it tricky to get all the air bubbles and imperfections out. It's tricky due to the small size and curvature to really lay it down perfectly. I repeat the same process for the rear window. For whatever reason, there were quite a few scrapes and scratches on the polycarbonate in this area. I don't know if it's from when I was running it earlier or if it's something there from when the body was being manufactured, but the dark tint really makes these imperfections pop, which I think is one of the downsides of using auto tint for RC bodies. It's a bit tricky to lay down smooth, and any dust or smudges or whatever is going to stick out like a penguin in the Sahara. At least with dark tint like what I'm using here. I believe this is 15 or maybe 20% tint I'm using on the rear windows. I also cut out the rear window defroster and applied that to the body. Kudos to ABC Hobby for great decals. I'm always very pleased with the variety and quality of them. All in all, the tint looks cool, but like I said, it does show some imperfections. I think for a dark tint like this, spraying tint is the way to go, especially if the surface is curved. However, for a lighter tint like what I did for the side windows, the result looks nearly flawless, as you'll see in a bit. I think it's a combination of a flatter surface, making applying it a bit easier, and a light tint doesn't show the imperfections like a dark tint does. And at least for me, spraying a light tint like that would take a lot of time, be quite difficult, and probably wouldn't turn out as perfectly consistent as using this tint film. For me, I think the lesson learned from this body is for a dark tint, spray it, and for a light factory style tint, use film. But if any of you have tried this, let me know what your experiences have been. At the time I wasn't sure whether or not I wanted to lightly tint the windshield, but I think I'm going to give it a very light factory style tint just to give it a little more of a realistic look. Also, all the excess you see on the inside of the body is no big deal. Since the tint film doesn't stick to the paint, it's very easy to cut off the excess tint film with a hobby knife. Next, I wanted to add some body lines. I started by using a little bit of Tamiya polycarbonate cleaner to make sure the tape has a clean surface to adhere to. If you don't have any cleaner on hand, soap and water would probably suffice. Next, I apply the tape. I've always just ran it along the molded panel gap with my finger, then cut off the excess and use my fingernail or a toothpick to move the tape a bit in any spots that need correction. There may be a better way to do this, but this way has been working for me. In places where there are curves, I like to use multiple strips of tape instead of just one, since I find that time and exposure to the sun sometimes seems to shrink the tape a bit, but if it's divided into multiple sections, it seems to hold its position better. I believe this is ABC Hobby bodyline tape. I'm using both 0.5 and 0.3mm tape in certain sections of this body. Here's a look at the body with the body lines applied. They stand out a bit more than on a real car, but I think it's a nice addition to the body and it adds another level of detail. Here I'm using a little bit of polycarbonate cleaner to remove any residue left from positioning the tape. After adding panel lines, I applied all the decals. I designed a new interior base and body mount piece for the chassis. This new piece has slots that allow for more adjustability of the position of the body and will drop the body down a few millimeters from where it was before. I sprayed the piece flat black and glued them together before replacing the old piece with this new one. This upper support piece needed to be removed temporarily. I'll probably be redesigning this piece in the near future to allow for more space for the interior. Unlike the old piece, which had 3 screws threaded directly into it, the new piece has a slot for a nut. The nut can be tightened and loosened from the top, allowing the piece to be positioned. I needed to glue some magnets to the new base so the body can be secured to it. To make sure the magnets are positioned correctly, I placed the magnets on the body before gluing them in place. Here is the body mounted with the new piece. I still need to make a few adjustments to the height and position, but I really like how the body now sits lower. Finally, I wanted to mount the spoiler and headlight pieces. I started by making holes for the screws to fit through. Instead of using the included screws, I used two M2 machine screws, washers, and nuts to secure the spoiler instead. I secured the spoiler by threading the screw through the nut, and once tight, I used a little bit of glue to secure the nut to the spoiler, so if I wanted to remove the spoiler, I wouldn't have to worry about the nuts moving and not being able to be threaded into. The setup is an extra step, but it allows for the spoiler to be solidly attached to the car and easily removable. With all that in place, I secure the top of the spoiler to the bottom with double-sided tape. To secure the tops of the headlights, I just use a bit of shoe glue to hold them on. And here's how the car looks right now. Overall, I'm very pleased with how the car is progressing. I've still got several things I need to do to complete this car, including lights, interior, and getting some new wheels. Of course, I'm also going to continue to tune the car to improve its drifting. Before concluding this video, I want to thank you all for watching and subscribing. This past week has been crazy for this channel, going from like 1,500 subscribers to 10,000 in a week, and I think the views have more than tripled, which is so awesome. And more than that, the amount of comments and support and just general interest from all of you is amazing. I had no clue there'd be so much interest in this kind of thing. I've got one more video coming out this year, probably in less than a week. In it, I'm going to kind of do an overview of all the projects I've got in progress, and I guess kind of do a reintroduction to the channel since so many people are new. As well as talk about some potentially big changes coming to this channel and beyond in 2018 that I'd like to hear your feedback on, as well as a few other updates and announcements as well. So be sure to be on the lookout for that. But thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next time.